Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we are at the first year player draft here in the 2042 season, just about 3 weeks before the trade deadline. And it may need to be a more active trade deadline for our Rockies. We're having a good season at 51-41. We're tied for first in the NL West with the San Diego Padres. But for the first time in many seasons, we're really not in the mix to have the best record in baseball and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. As you can see, the Atlanta Braves at 56-35, the St. Louis Cardinals at 59-31, the Texas Rangers at 59-33, and the Baltimore Orioles at 59-32 are all significantly ahead of the Padres and our Rockies in the standings. And interestingly, in the AL West, the Mariners and the A's are tied with the exact same record that our Rockies and Padres have. So the team is performing well if we were to look at, and we can look at, the team statistics. We're 51-41, but we're 5 below Pythagorean expectations, so we've definitely gotten a bit unlucky this year. You can see we've certainly struggled in the 9 games we played in July with a 3-6 record, but 4th in the National League in runs scored, combined with 2nd in the National League in runs allowed. In theory, should be a team competing for the best record in the National League, so perhaps things will normalize a bit going forward. We have made a trade that we started talking about a couple of episodes ago, and we have rented, although it may be a little more than a rental because he's arbitration eligible, I believe, for the final time next season. Picked up the catcher Alex Arellano from the Salt Lake City Trappers. Left-handed hitting catcher. Like his blocking and framing skills, his arm is awful. I can't remember the last time I actually played with a catcher with a 35 arm, so that could be interesting to see. Batting profile is more than acceptable for a major leaguer. You can see he's been slightly above average to, unfortunately, materially below average in terms of some of his offensive numbers the last couple seasons, but still has a 0.8 WAR this year, and as a left-handed hitter, his ratings are materially better against right-handed pitching, which is where we intend to play him. To pick him up, we had to give up minor league pitcher Josh Clark, who I don't see as being a real big-time prospect, even though he does have some positive personality traits, only 20 years old, and he can throw 100 miles an hour. The more substantive move was giving up the 25-year-old infielder Jeff Andreessen. Respectable defensive player who can play anywhere, decent influence in the clubhouse, and the bat is basically major league quality. And he's also a switch hitter. He's just kind of gotten caught in a log jam. We've had a lot of good young infielders the last few years. You can see he spent 3 straight years for us at AAA Albuquerque, where he's basically been a league average-ish offensive player. But he's almost 26 years old. He's fragile physically, although I love the idea of a switch-hitting player as a utility guy who's got the capability to play any position in the infield. If I loved it that much, he would have made it at some point over these last few years when we've had a fair amount of turnover in our infield and many injuries in our infield. We would have given him a chance by now if he was a big part of our future. So not a major loss, and think that the price for Arellano more than recent. They did keep a small amount of his contract. Helps us a little bit this year for whatever is that worth. Set to make about $9.5 million next year. But if he's as productive as we hope he could be against right-handed pitching, where he has only put up, to be fair, an 86 WRC plus this year, could be the near to medium term solution for us at catcher, which is an area where we've been mixing and matching for the better part of a decade at this point since we traded away Drew Romo. With the departure of those two players to pick up Arellano, Also involved in another departure. J.D. Lee, our previous catcher, we've waived and DFA'd. You may remember an episode ago, we took a look at the trade market for him, and even if we were going to retain 100% of his contract, nobody was interested in touching J.D. Lee. Not claiming, again, that Arellano, with a 84 WRC plus in a WAR of less than 1 past the midway point of the season, is a great addition. But he's a lot better than what we've been getting from J.D. Lee, interestingly, this year. Lee hitting just a .180 and 211 at-bats, a sickly 25 WRC plus, and a full win below replacement. Nobody wanted to touch him. His defensive skills and his offensive skills have both really started to deteriorate materially in his mid-30s. Fortunately, it's the last year of that contract, the player option year of the 3-year extension that we signed him to as a bridge catcher. We're just going to have to eat it. Can't imagine anybody's going to claim him, since nobody was willing to trade for him when we were going to pay all of his contract. But you never know. The game works in mysterious ways. Fortunately, we've got the financial flexibility this year to just move on from Lee and hopefully upgrade our catcher position. We'll see what happens. And we'll move on now to what will be the main event for this episode, and that's the first-year player draft. Took a look at the draft in our last episode, and do appreciate all the thoughts and feedback from the Worldwide Scouting Department on which way we should consider going. We'll definitely talk through that feedback now and take it into account as we ultimately make our decision in the first round, and hopefully there might be a player or two that we talk about left in the second and maybe even third round for us to keep the discussion going. I think the general consensus of the Worldwide Scouting Department was similar to mine, not in love with any particular prospect. Doesn't seem like the most robust pool of players for us here in the late third round or late first round, compared to a few other years where we've had more attractive options. And not surprisingly, given a draft that looks like that, the opinions from the Worldwide Scouting Department come in a lot of different flavors and sizes. Most popular pitcher with the Worldwide Scouting Department was Dan Mershey Anstrom, first on Scott Donovan's list, also on DLL First Base 14 and Dustin Durbin's short list. Anstrom is a guy who's projected to go in the 4th round with the 6th pick in that round, but the right-handed high school pitcher certainly looks like a interesting prospect. Solid stamina, great personality, potential 4-pitch arsenal. We think his stuff and his movement could be a bit above average, the control average-ish. Dustin Durbin, we've also talked a lot recently about some of our recent struggles in scouting and player development and some of the potential reasons why for that. Dustin Durbin, who had 3 pitchers on his list, suggested also cross-checking heavily with the OSA and then going with the one where our scout and OSA were most aligned, and considering that as something to investigate. Doing that with this one, Dan Anstrom, actually helps you understand a little better why he's supposed to last till the 4th round, because the OSA, for whatever it's worth, is much lower on him than our scout is. Another pitcher noted by the Worldwide Scouting Department is the college starting pitcher Matthew Vance. He was also on Dustin Durbin's list, number 3 choice for Scott Donovan. The 21-year-old out of Cal, on paper, is the most developed starting pitching prospect available to us. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, but some significant work to do on the change. Like the stamina, don't love the low baseball IQ. Taking a look at the OSA ratings, and they're broadly in line with where we are. They're actually a little more constructive on advanced than we are, admittedly with extreme development risk, while we don't see that anymore. And the last pitcher that got some attention, Jordan Wood, the college closer. Dustin Durbin noted him as well. Very close to Major League ready at this point, but a guy who looks like he's definitely going to be only a reliever, but potentially a very effective one with that excellent fastball and splitter combination. Taking a look at the OSA, they've got similar thoughts on him as we do, although they're not as constructive on his control as our scout is at this point. There's also 4 position players that were offered up as interesting options by various members of the Worldwide Scouting Department. One of them is the catcher, David Slocum. Ravenspawn 3 and Not My 4-Ply both had Army Slocum at or near the top of their draft lists. Respectable defensive catcher, although a bit weak for his arm, given the trade we just made. Certainly that going to have something like that rule him out at this point. Like his high work ethic, and the bat could be potentially interesting. Not going to be a great contact hitter, but think that the power and the eye could both be well above average if he reaches his full potential. He's a guy who's projected to go right at the top of the second round, so all of these position players that we're going to be talking about are either expected to be off the board already or expected to be off the board very shortly, with one exception. Shortstop Dan Macon, liked by Barley Wine, Ravenspawn 3, and DLL First Base 14. Above average range, looks like a guy who could play multiple positions in the infield. Like his speed, for whatever it's worth, he's a really good bunter. Not necessarily a critical skill, I think, in 2042 baseball, unfortunately. The contact and the gap power could both be well above average. Never going to hit a lot of home runs. Should draw a decent number of walks. Committed to UMass. Switch hitting middle infielder who could also play a corner outfield spot, but probably has more value in the infield. If you get lucky and you're able to improve his defensive ratings, and hopefully one of these years we'll be able to work on that again in the development lab, could be an interesting player to consider. First baseman Ruben Villagrana, recommended by Barley Wine. He's already expected to have been off the board with the 30th pick in the first round. The left-handed hitting outfielder out of southeastern Louisiana. Looks like he could be a more than competent major league hitter, most likely at a first base or DH spot. And the last position player who was mentioned by a member of the Worldwide Scouting Department at the top of the list, or in the top 3 or so of their lists, is the center fielder Clay McCamey, second on Scott Donovan's list. Left-handed hitting center fielder, really good range, like the high adaptability and work ethic, good speed, good base running instincts. Think the gap power could be exceptional, and think everything else in his profile could be around average, maybe slightly better if he reaches his full potential. The OSA, reasonably constructive on him as well. McCamey is an odd one because he's not projected to go until the 30th pick of the 4th round. All of the other position players that we've talked about pretty much feel like we have to pick them right now, or we've got no chance at them. Whereas with McCamey, it's possible we might be able to wait a little bit longer. If I had to decide who to pick at the end of the last episode, I would have went with a player who nobody in the Worldwide Scouting Department had at or near the top of their lists. And that's the first baseman Keith Kennedy, high school prospect, younger prospect, not 18 years old yet. durable as far as his injury proneness, doesn't bring anything to the table on the base paths, and very, very little to the table defensively. But I think that bat is potentially very interesting. We think the contact can be average-ish, and think that the gap power, the home run power, and the eye could all be well above average. The gap power, admittedly, is likely to be wasted a little bit with that 25 speed. Might be able to turn a triple into a double, but it's possible with 25 speed that balls that some people would have as triples are going to be very, very, very long singles for Keith Kennedy. Looking at the OSA, they're not quite as constructive on him as our scout is, for whatever that's worth. But Kennedy was expected to go with the 32nd pick in the draft, and still on the board right now, but this is likely to be the only chance to get him committed to Florida. Higher bonus demand than a lot of these guys at $7.5 million, but did think it was interesting. Usually, not always, but usually, as I do my initial dive into the players in the previous episode, I come out of it with, all right, this is if I had to make a decision in the next 15 seconds who I'd probably go with. I usually kind of have a guy in mind by the end of talking through that episode, and Kennedy was the guy this year. It's just a very rare situation for the guy who, from my first look through, would have been the player that I probably went with to not receive any support from the worldwide scouting department. So that's an interesting dynamic for me to consider here as we get ready to make our decision. And I like some of the pitchers that we've talked about, as well as some other pitchers available in this draft. But I'm not in love with any of them in the first round. Anstrom, as we talked about, projected to go in the fourth round. Matthew Vance projected to go in the third round. And Jordan Wood not expected to be picked in the top 5 rounds of the mock draft. Now we know from experience that's not going to be the case, and the pitchers are going to go earlier than expected. But I can talk myself into, if we look at these 15 or so pitchers with 60-plus potential who are on the board right now, that a couple of them are still going to be around for us in the second round. And since I'm not in love with any of them, admittedly not in love with anyone in this draft, we are going to go with a position player. 3 ultimately kind of make it to my short list. David Slocum, the catcher, like his defense, really like his potential bat, like the high work ethic. A lot of development needed for the 18-year-old to get to be a productive major league catcher, but you can say that about any high school player. The OSA even higher on his home run power, a bit lower on his contact, and much more constructive about his defense than we are. Although we've been struggling with some of our recent picks in the draft and them dropping off in terms of their scouting reports very shortly after we bring them on board. I'm still not going to put a ton of weight into the OSA ratings, low accuracy, and generally, historically, an OOTP not as useful as your own scout's ratings if you have a good scout, but have to be fair, and if we're going to think about the OSA, it should make us, I think, a little more likely to bring David Slocum on board. Multiple viewers noted that the commit school of Dallas Baptist University that I didn't know anything about is a D1 program, so a legitimate school that Slocum has committed to. Second guy on the short list is the switch-hitting shortstop, Dan Macon. Think the contact and gap power with good speed could be a pretty interesting combination. Has the ability to play multiple positions in the infield. Not going to be a gold glove winner anywhere. Clearly, we think he's even at his peak, a below average defensive major league shortstop. But he could also play second or first and could play third as well, although we'd love the arm to be a little bit better there. OSA is much less constructive on him with a 50 potential rating than we are. Don't see nearly the same type of contact potential that we do. Extreme development risk. They like his range a little better. But again, I'm going to try not to let the OSA be a huge driver of my decision making, although it's certainly worth looking at and talking about, particularly with some of the struggles that I've been having executing on these decisions in a good way. And the last guy that I'm considering is the guy that I like that the worldwide scouting department is less enthusiastic about, and that's the first baseman, Keith Kennedy. Like the durability, really like the potential bat. There's nothing else to like about him. He is a first base, left field DH type, and realistically is best suited as a DH. If the bat develops to where he has 75 power and 75 eye with average-ish contact, he's a more than useful designated hitter who with the durability could be in the lineup every day. As we've talked about, the OSA is less enthusiastic about him than we are. But he is definitely a guy who's still under consideration for me here with our first round pick. As I noted earlier, Slocum expected to go with the first pick in the second round. Macon expected to go with the 11th pick in the second round. And Kennedy was already expected to be off the board with the 32nd pick in the first round. So extremely unlikely that any of these guys will be around when it comes time for us to make our next selection. And for the first time in several years, we are going to go with a high school player, back to the way we tended to do drafts in OOTP over the years, until over the last year and a half or so in real time, we've gotten educated by some of our viewers and have been somewhat more receptive to bringing college players on board. But this year, outside of a couple of those pitchers that we talked about, the pool available for us here with the 34th pick in the draft was definitely weighted towards high schoolers. And we are going to ultimately go with the position player who we really like and was also, in terms of the support from the worldwide scouting department, the slight victor among position players, and that's the shortstop Dan Macon. I think the bat with that contact and gap power and speed combination could be pretty interesting in cores. Never going to hit home runs, but he should draw a decent number of walks. Like the switch hitter as a infielder. Hopefully we can make the infield ability a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and pick Dan Macon. Go ahead and meet his demand, bring him on board. We will, at this point, put David Slocum onto the short list. And we're also going to put our guy, Keith Kennedy, onto the short list for prospects to track what those two do over time. And not expecting either of them to be available with our second round pick. If they were, we would run that card up to the commissioner. But as I talked about, I think there is a chance that there could be still a couple of interesting pitchers available, and hopefully some interesting position players as well when we get to our second round choice. And as expected, none of the top hitting prospects are still available. Clay McCamey is So that's positive. We had mentioned he was projected to go with the 30th pick in the 4th round. So not shocking that he's still potentially available. Of the players that we talked about at the end of the last episode, I think only Clay McCamey and the second baseman Rusty Walker are still available among the position players, but there are guys that we've thought about who have fallen through. Pitching-wise, as expected, a fair amount of those 60 potential pitchers still around, including 2 that we talked about last round. Dan Anstrom was projected to go in the 4th round, the high school pitcher that the OSA was less constructive on than we were. Interestingly, the closer, Jordan Wood, who was not projected to go in the first 5 rounds of the draft, is off the board, but the college pitcher, Matthew Vance, who's projected to go with the 21st pick in the 3rd round, still is available. As we talked about, the OSA a lot higher on him than we are, admittedly with extreme development risk that he won't reach his potential. But our scout is still reasonably constructive on him. Don't love the low baseball IQ, but he's been an effective pitcher against a great competition level at Cal. And I think for a 2nd round pick for a college player, he is a really interesting option. I'm going to spend a little time offline just making sure that there's not somebody else out there that I've missed who would be better than him. But I think in terms of a draft that we weren't incredibly enthusiastic about, rolling the dice that there would be a pitcher available in the 2nd round and having guys like Vance and Anstrom still on the board is not a horrible outcome. And I'm sure, but just by virtue of the only yellow overall rating on the screen, that Jim Johnson attracted attention of some of the worldwide scouting department. We'll take a look at him, reliever out of Missouri. His stuff and his movement are major league quality already. Do worry a little bit about the control, but think he could certainly be a solid contributor as a right-handed arm out of the bullpen in the not-too-distant future. If he's still around in subsequent rounds, certainly somebody to consider, but Matthew Vance is a bit more balanced as a prospect and I think has more value as a potential starter, even though his stuff is definitely not going to be as good. I think we're going to get more innings out of him, similar movement, and we think his control should be better than Johnson's. So we are going to go with the college player here with our 2nd round pick, Matthew Vance, bonus demand pretty close to slot, and we're going to bring him on board. And I think there could be some interesting options for us still available in the 3rd round. Dan Anstrom still available, so that's certainly one right there. Jim Johnson still available as well. So 2 interesting pitchers that we've spent some time talking about still on the availability list, as well as Clay McCamey. So some interesting considerations here in the 3rd round, where hopefully we'll get another player who could become a contributor down the line. And here in the 3rd round, I think we're going to take advantage of what should be a little bit of value. Dan Anstrom, as we've been talking about, projected to go at the top of the 4th round, so unlikely that he's going to still be around for us in the future. Our scout has a good view on him. The OSA doesn't, but I still trust our scout much more than the OSA. Love the personality in terms of his development. Really like a potential 4-pitch arsenal. Plenty of stamina to start. And as we've talked about, think his stuff and his movement could be above average. The control could get up to average-ish. He's got a lot of work to do to get there. But with Scott Donovan, DLL first base 14, and Dustin Durbin all having identified Anstrom as a target for us, he was actually the most popular pitcher among the worldwide scouting department. And I think it's pretty good value for us to potentially be able to get him here in the third round. We've got the money to pay much above bonus, or much above slot in terms of his bonus this year. So we're going to go ahead and bring Anstrom on board, second straight pitcher for us. And interesting decisions still ahead of us in the fourth round is Clay McCamey, still on the board, and Jim Johnson still on the board as well. And although I've spent time looking at some other guys, to me it does come down to the guys that we've been talking about a bit, McCamey versus Johnson. Johnson, the 22-year-old, as I said, seems to be a right-hander who could be a contributor in the majors in the not-too-distant future if we've got him scouted properly. The OSA, admittedly, lower on him than we are. They're very down on his movement. They actually think there's more control potential there than we do, but don't see him having quite high a ceiling as we do, and they do see extreme development risk of even reaching that 50 potential, which is certainly not optimal. But again, if we're going to trust our scout, pretty interesting guy to consider in the fourth round. To be fair, though, Clay McCamey is also a pretty interesting guy to consider in the fourth round. Left-handed hitting outfielder with really good range, really good speed, like the high adaptability and work ethic, although I think he'd be the second low baseball IQ player that we've picked in the first 4 rounds of this draft, which wouldn't necessarily be great. Really like the gap power. I think the rest of his bat is likely average-ish. If we get really lucky, maybe slightly above average. The OSA also sees him having a pretty well-balanced bat, pretty good speed. McCamey expected to go with the final pick in this fourth round. Actually, he's been mocked to go right to us as I think about it. The 30th and final pick in the round is, of course, ours, since there's not any. Actually, it isn't ours. There are still a couple of supplemental picks in the fourth round somehow. Or maybe, I'm guessing they're probably actually picks. No, because if people didn't sign a fourth rounder, they wouldn't get a pick. So I think those are supplemental picks somehow. But near the end of the round, McCamey, as we've talked about, is the guy who's been projected to go to us since this whole draft got started. And I just think there's still a chance that Johnson will be there in the 5th round for us. And it'll actually have turned from a draft that was pretty uninteresting to one where we'll potentially get 5 guys that we kind of like the value on in the first 5 rounds. So we're going to try to swing for the fences a bit. We're going to go with Clay McCamey, the high school outfielder here in the 4th round. And if Johnson does sneak through to the 5th round, we already know what our selection is going to be. And Jim Johnson is still around. So while I don't love the overall talent level that was available to us here in this draft, it might be a down draft overall. I really do like the way that the board has broken for us. Got the most popular position player with the worldwide scouting department with our first pick, college pitcher who a couple members of the worldwide scouting department really liked with our second pick, the most popular pitcher with the worldwide scouting department, a high schooler with our third pick, guy Clay McCamey, who was still noted as one of the top handful of players in this draft by a member of the World Scouting Department in the 4th round. And then a guy that kind of emerged as we moved through the draft, a college reliever with some potential to help us in the not-too-distant future, in Jim Johnson in the 5th round. So I think that the draft broke reasonably well for us. Obviously, we'll continue to track my guy, Keith Kennedy, and Raven Spawn, and not my 4-plies guy, David Slocum, the catcher, to see how they perform over time. They would have been the other options for us in the 1st round over Macon. But don't anticipate that either of those guys would have been available in the 2nd round. Obviously, they weren't, because we would have taken them if they were on the board. Just for perspective, our guy Keith Kennedy went with the supplemental 3rd pick of the 1st round, so 40th overall, and then David Slocum went with the 5th pick in the 2nd round. So they came off the board relatively quickly after we selected Macon, as we anticipated they might. And as I mentioned, since we haven't been real active in free agency, we do have money to spend this year. So we did pick up a couple more guys in the draft in the later rounds that we're going to have to throw a little bit of money at to get them signed. Take a quick look at those 3 players right now. One is the right fielder, Matt Metz, 7th round selection. The home run power at that point was interesting to us. Question his contact and the number of strikeouts he's going to have. But if he blossoms a bit as far as his ability to make contact, could be a pretty interesting left-handed hitter. Certainly a lottery ticket more than anything, but felt that he was worth considering there in the 7th round. In the 9th round, high school pitcher Dominique Andre. Like a lot of the personality traits, don't really think he's going to be a big-time major leaguer, but he does have good work ethic, as well as some other personality traits, as we noted. Potential 4-pitch arsenal. Tend to think with those fly ball tendencies, he's probably not going to be a perfect fit for Coors, but as an 18-year-old left-hander, he's got a lot of work to do over the next several years before that even becomes a consideration. And in the 10th round, the highest demand, a guy looking for actually more than Metz and Andre combined, high school starting pitcher Bruce Taylor. Enough stamina to be a starter, potential 4-pitch arsenal, a guy who looks like if he reaches every bit of the potential we think he has, could be a 5th starter or long reliever. But again, more of a lottery ticket than anything in the later mid-rounds of the draft. So hopefully we can get those 3 guys signed as well and start rebuilding this farm system. Definitely have a fair amount of work to do. Check in quickly on how the season's been going in the minors for some of our top prospects. 23rd ranked farm system out of 32 overall, so we continue to be on the less productive side, at least in terms of our current rankings. Only 2 top 100 prospects. Makoto Hirota, the starting pitcher, who was a scouting discovery back for us in 2034. 4-8 with an ERA of over 5 at AAA Albuquerque this year. Has been good for a 1.4 WAR. We would certainly still anticipate that we bring up Hirota as a September call-up at the very least. If we have some injury issues between now and then, could see him earlier. Nils Mensch, IAFA signing from 2036, is the number 98 prospect in baseball. Finally developing that bat a little bit this year in Double-A, hitting 282 in 273 at-bats. You'll remember, if you were watching closely, which I know many of you do, that he was the guy who looked like he was on track to have a successful Generate Bat Speed program, which could have boosted his power when we cut him by mistake because his radio button was clicked several months ago when we were cleaning up our international complex. That, although we were able to use the commish mode to put him back on our roster the same day, that wiped out his development lab, which certainly was not helpful because that additional power right now, as he's now 23 years old, would certainly be pretty important in terms of us hopefully getting him to be a guy who could contribute at the majors in the not too distant future. 4 other top 200 prospects on the team. Starting pitcher Ezekiel Caban, who was our second round pick in 2038. 3-4 with a 6.44 ERA in Double-A Hartford. Haven't even been using him as a starter all the time this year since we do have some talent on that team. Still looks like a guy who could be a useful major league pitcher, but don't think the stuff is ever going to be special enough, unfortunately, that he's ever really going to be a true impact player at the major league level. Catcher Adrian McCallum, unfortunately, has missed almost all the year with a broken kneecap. The 11th round pick from 2038 out of VCU has developed well for us. I know, a rare thing to hear at this point. Was hitting .357 in his first 56 at-bats of the year. Looks like he could be a competent major league catcher, certainly with a average-ish potential hitting profile and a fairly average batting profile. Viewing him as more of a backup catcher or perhaps even the third catcher in an organization who we can bring up from AAA when we need over the next few years. Obviously, he was a college player when we picked him and an older college player at that point. Actually, not that old. It was 4 years ago, but he's 25 and a half at this point, so not a huge part of our future, but still a guy that we hope we may get to see right at the end of this year, playing a little more in AAA, maybe can help us down the line. Ernesto Menjivar was a scouting discovery in 2037. The 20-year-old was 9-0 with a 2.09 ERA at Fresno. We just promoted him recently to High A Spokane, where he's only pitched 1 game for us, so not going to draw too many judgments on that. Still have hopes that he could be a relatively high-end player, potential 6-pitch arsenal for Menjivar. Like some of the personality traits, decent stamina, and we think his movement and control could both be above average as well. He is definitely one of the better-looking prospects in our organization, and unlike a lot of the other guys in our organization, we're actually thinking that he's getting better as far as his potential over time, which is always nice to see. Final top 200 prospect in our organization, the starting pitcher Orlando Preziato, scouting discovery from back in 2036. He's 6-3 with a 3.96 ERA at Double-A Hartford in the Eastern League. Looks like a guy who could be a useful back of the rotation starter for us potentially, or a long lefty reliever. Looking at his ratings, he's actually arguably more effective against right-handed pitching right now than left-handed pitching. So don't think he's necessarily going to be a lefty specialist for us down the line, but still hold out some hope that Preziato will turn into a useful player down the line. A couple other prominent members of our organization we'll touch on briefly. Luis Escobar, the first round pick from 3 years ago, hitting just .201 in AAA Albuquerque for us this year. But he does have 14 homers and 47 ribbies. 25-year-old, we thought would certainly have had major league experience by this point when we drafted him 3 years ago today. Still holding out hope that he could be a contributor at the major league level with his bat and the versatility of his glove, even if it's not necessarily a great glove. But the way he's hitting this year in AAA doesn't give us a ton of confidence that El Capitan is actually going to be a big-time contributor. Steve Wheats was our second-round pick 2 years ago out of Gardner-Webb University, hitting .296 with 18 homers and 58 ribbies in Double-A Hartford for us. Versatile defensive player, high baseball IQ, and a bat that still looks like it could certainly be more than usable for a infielder at the major league level. Looking at his ratings, looks like he's probably ready to move up to the PCL. Would expect that we will do that either in the very near term offline or at the very latest by the end of this month. But Wheats is a guy who was in camp with us this past year in spring training, and still holding out some hope for him for the future. We'll finish off with a couple of less positive things. Josh Thomas, who was our first round pick a year ago, we thought the left-handed hitter might be able to help us in the outfield in the near term. He is hitting .286 this year with 12 homers and 40 ribbies in Double-A Hartford. Still love his personality, but looking at his batting ratings, not really anticipating that he's ever going to be a material contributor for us at the major league level with his bat, which is unfortunate. He is one of these guys who collapsed in terms of our scouts' outlook on him almost instantly after we selected him a year ago. And as bad as it's gone with Thomas, it's gone even worse with our first-round pick from 2 years ago, Trent Nath, the catcher, who we thought could potentially become our catcher of the future. Still like his blocking and framing ability, still love his personality, but similar to Thomas, the bat has just tanked completely. He's hitting $171 this year in AAA. We're trying to play him every day and hope that we can salvage something, but looking at those ratings and potential ratings and looking at his trajectory as far as the scouting, where he was 70 potential when we drafted him. When we scouted him just a couple weeks later, we thought he was 60 potential. And when we scouted him just a few months after that, pretty much thought that his future was much in question. And by the next year, basically felt that he had no real future as a major leaguer as well. So those guys are a couple of the misses, but figured it was worth talking about both Thomas and Nath as we're finishing up the draft here and talking about some of our other prospects. And as I mentioned, have not been playing well here in the month of July. Just have 4 games left into the All-Star break. We'll sim through those before the end of the episode, find out who's on the All-Star team. And then next time around, we will sim through the rest of July, decide whether we need to make any other trades, and then go through August and September as well, hopefully, and figure out whether we're going to be able to guide these Rockies back into the playoffs here in 2042. And we split our final 4 games before the All-Star break, so sadly that 500 record over 4 games represents progress in the way that we've been playing here in the month of July, with just over 2 weeks until the trade deadline. We're now a game behind the Padres in the NL West, so we would be back in a wild card, a game behind the Padres in the division if the season were to end today. At the All-Star break, Kevin Roberts Jr. ranks 3rd in the National League in ribbies, 3rd in the National League in steals. One of the guys he's behind is our longtime center fielder, Anthony Pack Jr. Played with Salt Lake City a year ago where he stole 34 bases and hit .230. This year he's with Pittsburgh, 31 steals and a .227 batting average. Still putting up 2+ WAR seasons, still has the great speed and the very good defense. But the bat is problematic at this point. Pitching-wise, looking at the leaderboard, Jesse Hoffmeister 2nd in strikeouts, where he's been much of the year, and 3rd in the league in pitcher WAR. So Hoffmeister having a really good season for us. I believe he's heading into his final arbitration-eligible year next year. So he's going to be getting really expensive for us. The 5-8 record a year after he led the National League in wins is not impressive, but 150 strikeouts in 118 2/3 innings, 3.11 ERA, and a sub-1 WHIP to go with that 3.4 WAR are pretty impressive. 63% quality start percentage. The BABIP against him this year just .256. And not surprisingly, given the lack of demand for him, J.D. Lee has cleared waivers. I'm assuming he's going to refuse the assignment to AAA and we'll just have to dump him. Yep, so J.D. Lee, you can have your release. We're going to just suck up the rest of your contract. Thank you for your time with us in Colorado, and best of luck in the remainder of your career. All-Star Game rosters and Prospects Game rosters announced, given that we've only got 2 top 100 prospects, not expecting a lot of representation from Colorado in the All-Star Prospects Game. We do see on the list Makoto Hirota, who, as we've talked about, the number 23 prospect in baseball, the top-ranked prospect in our farm system. Hasn't been great this year in AAA, but looking at his ratings, he's worth trying in the majors. As I mentioned, worst case scenario for him is a September call-up. Worst case scenario for us is that we've got some pitching injuries and we need to bring him up before then. Don't love the outspoken personality to go with low adaptability and low baseball IQ, but ultimately we think that the ratings for him indicate he could still be a pretty interesting finesse pitcher at the major league level down the line. And hopefully that line is not too far away for Mr. Hirota. He is, not surprisingly, the only member of our organization in the All-Star Prospects Game. The All-Star Game itself, Leo Martinez, once again an All-Star. I believe that's his 11th time on the All-Star team. And the 32-year-old has had a fantastic career for us, 6-5 this year with a 3.37 ERA, putting up a 2.7 WAR. Just an incredibly consistent pitcher for us year to year as our number 1 starter over most of his career. And he is a 3-time Cy Young Award winner, probably at the age of 32, past his Cy Young Award winning days, but still a very high-quality major league pitcher, and good to see him get some recognition. Also recognition for 2 of our relievers, Chris Kennedy, 3-time Mariano Rivera Award winner, who also added a Cy Young in 2040, working out of the pen. 9-4 record this year with a 2.62 ERA over 55 innings pitched. He's a high-volume setup slash stopper for us in terms of his roles. I have gotten suggestions recently, given that he does have 3 devastating pitchers and 35 stamina, to consider using him in the rotation. It's an interesting suggestion. He's definitely only kind of a 4-inning guy if we do that. He's been so effective for us, pitching 90, 100 innings a year the last few years, and he's on target for a similar number this year that I'm a little reticent to take him out of the role where he's been so successful for us. But if we were to have significant injury issues as the season moves on or come playoff time, it's certainly an interesting thing to consider. And that suggestion to move Kennedy potentially into the rotation most recently came from Quaitime. So appreciate the input from the Worldwide Scouting Department on that. Not something that we're going to do immediately, but good to have in the back of our minds. Our 3rd pitcher to make the All-Star team this year, Melvin Reyes, 2nd-time All-Star, made it 2 years ago in 2040, and then again this year. Tends to... Actually, it looks like he makes the All-Star team in the years where his ERA is higher, as many of you like to remind me. And it is, of course, I know ERA not always the greatest indicator for a pitcher, but still interesting that the year that he had a 191 ERA working out of the bullpen and a 1.9 WAR, he wasn't an All-Star. The year he had a 4.82 ERA and a 0.4 WAR. And this year with a 4.26 ERA and a 0.6 WAR are the ones that he's been named to the All-Star team. Only allowed 2 home runs in 31 2/3 innings. Good solid year for Luisito Reyes, and glad to see him get recognized along with Martinez and Kennedy as a 2042 National League All-Star. Position player-wise, we have a first-time All-Star in a guy who for a long time was the top prospect in our organization, IAFA signing from 8.5 years ago. And Carlos Barrel Davila, one of the big successes our minor league system has had in recent years, hitting 265, 26 doubles, 2 triples, and 11 home runs. 47 runs scored, driven in 37. He's still, for a guy with his speed and slightly above average base running instincts, at least according to our scout, is not great on the base paths. 7 stolen bases in 15 tries. OPS just above 800, 114 WRC plus, and a 3.6 WAR, which is already better than the numbers he put up in his first 2 full seasons. Fielding-wise, 14.1 zone rating, 1.139 defensive efficiency, certainly putting up numbers that indicate he could be a Gold Glove shortstop down the line, and really great to see the 25-year-old get some recognition as one of the premier shortstops in the National League this year. I'm expecting as we scroll down through the outfielders, there will be one more All-Star, and yep, a 5th and final All-Star for us. Kevin Roberts Jr., Mr. 5 Tools. Like Leo Martinez, he has been with us his entire career, and like Leo Martinez, he is now an 11-time All-Star. The 3-time MVP has not won an MVP award since 2035, given that he's going to be 34 years old in less than 2 weeks. Probably past his MVP winning days, but still having a very productive season, although the batting average has dipped to 249. Does have 17 homers, those 66 ribbies that rank 3rd in the league, the 28 steals that rank 3rd in the league, put up a 121 WRC plus and a 3.2 WAR. And if he can continue to hit homers at a pretty good rate the rest of this season, should be able to get to a 30-30 season. He should definitely get there as far as the steals. As I noted, getting 13 home runs over the last 2.5 months of the season is the question for Roberts. We signed him to that big extension in the offseason that we hope will keep him in Colorado throughout his entire career. Tend to think that we'll be overpaying him a bit for some of those years, but given that he is a franchise icon, member of all 7 of our World Series championship teams, want him to play his entire career in Colorado, and we've certainly gotten good value from that 12-year contract that's coming to an end this year. Although we're paying him $20 million this year, that's still certainly a bargain cost for us. Great influence in the clubhouse, and Roberts Jr. joins his teammates Carlos Barrel Davila, Melvin Reyes, Chris Kennedy, and Leo Martinez as All-Stars for our Rockies here in 2042. Next time around, we're going to really figure out whether we need to add anybody else in the trade market to try to bolster this team and its chances to make the playoffs. Still 4th in the NL in runs scored, still 2nd in the NL in runs allowed, and we're still 5 games below Pythagorean expectations. So can certainly argue that we've just gotten unlucky. The defense still really good, 3rd in defensive efficiency, 1st in zone rating. Base running good, 2nd in steals, 5th in base running overall. So tend to think it's been a couple of random balls that just haven't gone the way that we would have preferred, that have us fighting for a wild card spot rather than fighting for the division. Although, let's not be melodramatic. We're only 1 game behind in the division. We're still certainly in the divisional race. And we're still certainly in the race to compete for the best record in the National League. The Cardinals at 61-33 are obviously having a great season, but they're only 9 games ahead of us in the standings. Probably not going to catch him, but it's certainly not impossible to make up 9 games over the final 2.5 months of the year, particularly when we're not necessarily playing as well as the numbers say we could be. So we will find out what, if anything, we do other than the addition of Arellano in the trade market over the next couple of weeks at the beginning of the next episode, and then sim through the final couple months, as we've talked about, to get to the postseason, hopefully. If you're wondering what Arellano's done for us, 0 for 7 with 3 walks and a strikeout in his first 3 games with us in Colorado. So a 19 WRC plus. He fits in very well with the type of production we had been getting from J.D. Lee. So that trade is working out spectacularly so far, but again, an extremely small sample size. He got traded right before the trade deadline. Hopefully can settle in over the next few days and get more production from him coming out of the All-Star break. Again, with the fact that he's 0 for 7, it's pretty much going to be impossible for us to not get better production out of him going forward. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.